This conference will now be recorded.
Good afternoon, all. I'd like to call the Plan Committee Ordinance Working Session to order. It's June 9th, 2026 at 12:01. Okay. We have let me tell you or suggest to you what I thought would be a plan of attack. Rick has made a run at intent, which I'd like to go through. BD and I made a run at the definition of 1.5 story. Which I like to go through and then finish going through the original ordinance that we had started at. But if you would let me, I'd like to make some observations. Andy Bartelt he's not here, so this is his work I'm representing. He has a nephew who's an architect. And he wrote a long email about what we're dealing with and what the problems are. And to highlight, his nephew did a really nice job of kind of analyzing what's wrong with our ordinance. And he basically said, given our allowance of flatter roofs and 23 feet, any architect could fall out of bed and design a 2-story house. He said, your biggest problem is your roof lines. That's your biggest problem. When you start going down to 3 and 12, you can easily get a 2-story house. Then he further went on to say that he quoted an ordinance, I'm trying to think where it was, on the East Coast somewhere. If we want to go with an absolute height, which basically said you could reproduce anything you have right now for the house out there, or go down to 20 feet. And he says 20 feet is plenty of room to do a 1.5 stories. We haven't really dealt with the fact and with what about someone that tears down a house out there now that has more than 23 feet. We have quite a few houses that have more than 20 feet. Are we saying on ordinance that you're restricted 23 feet? I don't know the answer. But what I wanted to give out as food for thought, I started looking at the changes we made to get to where we are right now. And I think the biggest change in my mind is 5A3 of the ordinance, which says additional modifications or replacement projects. I'm sorry, no, 5A3. That's not the one we changed the numbering system. I'm looking for the one that literally said footprints can be modified. Wasn't that?
It's 2, sub 2, isn't it?
5, yeah. So,
Oh, 2. Okay, 2, 3.
The footprints in the protected waterfront district can be modified.
Okay. That was a change. I'm not sure why we made that change when we went up to 23 feet. But I was going through a thought process, and one of my biggest concerns is that we're going to end up with a subdivision of cute houses that look like Prices and Cultus.
Yeah.
That's what they're all going to be, because an architect, to get the maximum number of square footage, no matter what the house originally looks like, he's going to make it a square rectangle. And with that dimensions, you can get the maximum number of square feet. And then I thought about the 2 examples. Culture, Price, the same thing. They ended up with about the same footprint. And to me, the houses, you can say they meet our ordinance, but it's just kind of cute. And do we want 25 cute houses? And then I thought about Golderman. Now, Golderman maybe just in order to meet our requirements, at first he was going to tear it down, but he used the same footprint. And he ended up with a house. Well, he ended up saving a lot of the house and material and so forth. But what I was trying to think about, if we really want to get different designs and even maintaining the existing homes and the existing looks, I would suggest that we do not allow people to change the footprint unless maybe we want to allow them to make it more narrow. Because otherwise, I think every time I went through all of Kim's work, and there's 6 houses out there right now that have more than 1,500 square feet on the first floor. Some of them like 2,000 square foot. And if we let them knock it down and build a rectangular house, it's gonna be huge. It's gonna be, now, our second floor is gonna control that, and the steepness of the roof will control that. But what I'm suggesting that we consider is not allowing changes to footprints. When I went through that list that Kim provided, and I'm looking for it right now, of the houses that are very, very big, over 1,500 square feet, over the Price and the Culture House, they're irregular houses. They were probably cabins with an addition like Goldman's and these different things. If we restricted them to their original footprint, it would be a whole different look than if we let them to tear it down, use the square footage in a new footprint, we're gonna end up with houses, I think, that all look like theirs except kind of a modified. So what I would at least, as we go through this discussion today, have you consider that we make people stick with their original footprint? I don't remember why, Brenda, maybe you do, why we decided to allow people to monkey with the footprint. In other words, you could have no more square footage. Because the original ordinance, you had to deal with whatever you had. You had to deal with the house and the footprint. And that to me is gonna open things up where we're gonna have kind of a common business. And as Andy's nephew said, as soon as you put a number on it, he didn't even like the maximum. He says, as soon as you put a number on it, everybody's gonna build that number. That's just their max. He would rather control of the steepness of the roof with the footprint. You know, he thinks the original footprint is very powerful. Because if you go through the black book and start to look at the houses, and we have pictures, you can see that the big ones, with the exception of, and I'm trying to think of the name of the house, Shorewood Partners. If you've got your list, it's at 9923. It's 2,573 square feet. It's a big house. However, it's had several additions. Now, if you let them rip that down, you have a big house. The other thing that you have to kind of keep in mind that we talked a little about, if our intent and our goal is to open up views to shoreline, most people that build a new house want to have maximum views of the shoreline. So they're going to want a wide house to have views from every window. I think we can solve that with the intent and some of the things we're doing right now. I also went through with the idea of let people tuck an accessory structure into the original structure. We only have 2 accessory structures in the whole district that are up today, and they're little sheds. I mean little sheds, like 9 by 12, that type of thing. So I don't know if that's a big deal. I'm still all for, I like the idea of whoever came up with it, of tucking it into the design and giving them their square footage if they get rid of that block of the view of the shoreline. Anyway, I kind of wanted to go through that. I think when we opened up the reconfiguration of square footage and footprint is when, that's why we end up with Price and Culture looking so similar. Because there's only so much that you do. Now, he had comments, he had some really good comments, he being Andy's nephew, about the dormers. He said that 3 and 12, we just opened it up. You know, that's why we have 2-story houses. If it would all been 6 and 12, even at 23 feet, it'd be pretty hard to put a second story. And now we're going to define a 1.5-story house, which is going to help us also. But he said the roof lines, he would certainly go at least 6 to 12. And that's what our whole historic district, I think we did that with the idea of trying to open it up, but we've opened up way too far. And also, he said the way we're measuring it, and we all, you know, did the best we could of that. He says it's really impossible to measure when we say square footage or roof line. You know, what is the square footage when you have all these different pitches? Just another thing I'll throw out, he also said, if you get rid of the 312s, you're probably getting rid of shed dormers. So you're probably gonna end up with here. And his suggestion that if you really like the looks of shed dormers, you could open up just a little bit of 312s. So many linear feet or something like that. for a shed. So that all being said, we can kind of go back, but I just wanted to get that idea out there. I think that footprint is what really opened everything up for the work we've seen so far, especially when I think about buildings. Yeah, we worked with the original one, and he did a lot of things right, but we ended up with a structure that looks interesting. He could have ripped it down and built the square.
Yeah.
1.5 stories tall, it probably wouldn't look a lot like the first. Because we've talked about this before too. How do we give an advantage to people that keep their houses? And they might want to update them or so forth. And this is where the other thing I'd like to think about is the height. So if somebody, like the large house I just mentioned, which I think is called Sherwood Inn Partners, it's 9923. It's a big white house with like a room that extends over kind of a front porch area. If we allow them, yeah, that's a very big house, but if they work with the original footprint, they would kind of be locked in to a very similar house. But if we let them reconfigure the footprint, it's going to be a long rectangular house probably. How do we encourage them to keep it? If they came to us with certainly above 23 feet or whatever maximum is going to be, and they wanted to rip it down, would we be willing to say, you know what, if you want to rehab what you, we'll let you keep that envelope, that cubic foot, if you're willing to rehab it, you know, maybe some minor modifications. But if you're going to rip it down, are we saying to them 23 feet maximum? Which would probably highly discourage them from ever ripping it down.
Because this is, what is their height?
I would be guessing. I would be guessing what it is. It appears more than 23, but I don't know. I don't know.
I see what you're saying.
We don't really have heights on the buildings. There is no easy way to get that without going out and measuring them. But yeah, if you look at the other one, if you got your books out, if you look at, and BZ has brought this, Schmelz's house at 98, 93. Yes, 2,000 per foot, but it's a bunch of additions and consolidations. If you had to work with the original footprint and we allowed him to go an upper level, it would be an interesting look. But it won't be this huge house with 2,000 square feet on the first floor and another 1,000 on the second floor. Yeah, there's better pictures.
That one?
Yeah.
Yeah. 98, 90.
That was probably when BB and I went out there, probably several little cabins
Sure.
that were hooked together with breezeways, which are definitely living areas now.
Yeah, because this, you're saying, if they tear down and build with the existing footprint and go to 23 feet,
Yeah.
it's going to be a really big house.
Well, if we don't make them use the existing footprint, if we make them use that existing footprint, which is.
Right, then they stick with an interesting kind of shape.
Right.
But if they could switch the footprint
Right.
around, then it'd be,
It'll be
yeah.
It'll be a big, and it'll be, I'll call it a traditional looking house, which I have nothing against what was done with price and culture, but I wouldn't want a lakefront house because it looks just like a
Yeah.
development.
To me, they're gonna look like an LP siding development.
Yeah, I mean,
That's what you see.
they're nice looking houses, they're quality houses, but I think what we liked about the lakefront is this eclectic collection of houses out there. And what we try to do is give everybody an equal opportunity to go up to an upper level. But I think when we open up that footprint, that really opens things up. And again, and throw a lot of stuff out there, but to think about how we encourage people to keep what they have and not tear it down. For people that are over 23, allow them, you know, to do some modifications, whether they want to do a dormer or not, but not increase the footprint.
Why don't we make something like that a permitted use? And just say, you know, if you're not changing, if you're using the identical footprint, and you're staying within these bounds, your modification is a permitted use.
Okay.
And then, in everything else, new construction is a conditional use. I mean, I suppose permitted use may be subject to design review or something.
Oh, and so, yeah, sure, we could still do that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there would be some
Mhm.
incentive there, easier process, and if they love their property and all that. I mean, I guess, going to your point about, about restricting the whole protected waterfront to the same exact footprint, I guess I probably wouldn't be in favor of that. I mean, I look at the Ephraim zoning code in total, in its entirety, and I'm thinking, I mean, what has been the intent of it from the beginning when we first did it? And that was really kind of to make Ephraim kind of look the same. I mean, in a lot of ways. I mean, we have
Style-wise.
Style-wise,
Right,
exactly. I mean, that's kind of what we've wanted people to do anyway.
Mhm.
So I don't know if quote, risk, a bunch of price and culture houses, which I don't have a problem with those. I suspect that wouldn't happen. I suspect people, but I guess as you saw from my intent thing, which I mean, that was just the start. I mean, I do want people to be able to, in theory, and, philosophically, be able to modify their place and to maybe rebuild something. We're going to have design review. I just don't want to get to where we're like Park City, Utah, where this is it, this is forever, this is it, no change, whatever. I think we can still get something that looks like Ephraim while allowing people some flexibility. That's just my initial impression to what you're saying. I'm not comfortable with telling people you got to use the same footprint. Like what we talked about last time, I think we did, that if we do something like, I understand there's only 2 outbuildings. I have no reason to doubt that. But if we got rid of outbuildings and we said, you could combine the square footage, but you can't make the home wider.
Mhm.
I mean, isn't that the main thing we're trying to accomplish here? We just don't want the homes wider, but if they could combine that into a deeper home, conforming to the setbacks, which we have to conform to those anyway. Probably, the Board of Appeals isn't going to be granting any variances, but give them some flexibility fore and aft. Haven't we accomplished the same thing? And yet we're allowing people to maybe get an extra 200 square feet or something like that. I mean, I like the idea philosophically of giving people some optionality here,
Mhm.
without just saying, no, you're done. I'm not comfortable with that thought.
I like the idea of tucking it in. We only have 2, I don't know, maybe I missed 1 or 2, but they were really sheds. And another option, meeting halfway, is to say to people, you can be no wider than your existing footprint.
Yes.
Now, if you want to be narrower and deeper in order to build a house that maybe you can get more square footage on the second floor, that would still address our concern about open viewing of the shoreline.
Right.
That would be another way to do it. I'm just looking back at just 2 years ago when we started this thing. And that had been on the book for 20-some years. Basically, you can't do a darn thing unless it's burned down.
Mm-hmm.
That was your kind of option. And there was nothing done out there.
Mm-hmm.
And we did open up the second floor, but then I think we also opened up by allowing the square footage to be reconfigured.
Do the setbacks help us because all of these lots are pretty small? Does that help contain?
I would think so.
It does. Basically we have our building envelope of what the setbacks as written, in this document are. But then we also grandfather. So you kind of have your building envelope as the ordinance says, and then you overlay whatever the existing setbacks are, and you kind of put that box in there too. So if, say, the setback to the water presently at its nearest point, the home is 20 feet from the water, the ordinance is 40. That's their new line, is 20 feet. So you kind of create another box within. But again, again, we've got the information, we could go property by property, but typically what you see is a lot of them are non-conforming to the road setback, a lot of them are non-conforming to the water setback, and probably a large number of them are not compliant to one of the two side yard setbacks. Typically, they hug one or the other property. So then when you grandfather, let's say the south boundary, typically there's lots of room on the north boundary. So with the footprint modification, they're not getting any closer to that south, but they could expand to the north, creating more width. So that can be the grandfather and the setbacks really, to me, as written, is more opening from an ordinance standpoint than it is restrictive. But combined with footprint max and potentially the wider present, that would be a further restriction.
Yeah, and as we talk about this, when you have time, it's interesting then to go through the book and
Yeah.
look at how this, because we only have 22, 23 houses out there. There's not that many, and then you see what you're really dealing with. And in fairness, in Price and Culture, they were two relatively square houses to begin with.
Mhm.
When you take away the garages that they had on, the rest of the house was pretty much a square.
So we should just stick with them. I was thinking design wise already, but maybe we should stick with what you guys are talking about.
Well, maybe what I'd like to do is just plant that seed. That's a big deal to go backwards on that, but that was where we were just 2 years ago. So like I say, we opened it up, and then we opened it up really outward by allowing people to reconfigure, no more square footage. Although I like the idea, I buy the idea that we restrict to the existing what they have right now. If that's really the intent of it, and that's what we say the intent is. And then speaking about intent, why don't we go to the work that Rick did and kind of walk through that and get comments from people. Since we've been yakking over the side here,
What page is
let's
that?
go to the right-hand side.
So that's what we're at now. Is that-
No, this is Rick's, right, this is the modified one. It took a lot of the language that we have right now, but based on our discussion 2 weeks ago, Rick modified it.
Generally prohibited.
So it basically says they can modify it with restrictions.
I mean, it's not really different than what we have now. I think it just makes it a little clearer, maybe.
I was curious about the last clause. The existing one says structures shall be restricted to those in existence as of 1998, and the new one says the same thing, and then says unless specifically noted in this section. I wondered what that is anticipating.
Nothing. I just put it in there because in case, we put something in, with our changes. But I have no problem taking that out. And I have no problem taking out generally before the word prohibited too. If we want to say that, I just was being maybe more expansive, but kind of a catch-all. But I have no problem changing that lot of sense, any of it, but certainly has sense.
I was just curious.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point.
I think if generally was out, that would totally be clear, right? New construction is prohibited. It's basically the existing that's there that can be modified.
Is it clear what construction means?
Geez, always these details.
I hate to add another sentence, going back to almost the original, maybe it's a replacement. No additional structures beyond those existing 1198 are allowed.
Yeah, that summarizes it pretty well.
But we are saying that, yeah, because the problem with new construction, price is new construction.
Was it?
Perfectly allowable. Price was a tear down. What I meant is new construction.
Yeah.
See, that's what I thought when I did this, is like a replacement would be new construction. Unless specifically noted in the section. I guess maybe that's what I was referring to. So
I
we
see.
do make an
Okay.
allowance for it, but you have, it's contained in this section.
Okay, what we were getting at with the original one is there'll be no new structures. If you don't have a structure, you can't get a structure to protect the waterfront. If you've got one, you can get one. If you got two, we'll have to decide what to do with the two, but
Is
that's
there,
what I was trying to hit.
is there even, is there a vacant lot now?
Sure.
Oh, is there?
South end.
Okay, along the.
Yeah, Murphy's is
I
a
mean,
vacant lot, or Holt's is a vacant lot. So there are several vacant lots where could very well be a building if we didn't have that prohibition. So I think somehow we have to drive in that original prohibition.
Lots that are vacant as of,
That's another thing. We could do it.
just lots that are vacant, or no construction is allowed on lots that are vacant as of today, or whatever.
Yeah. So I like going back to the
Go
original
back to
ordinance because it's pretty strong.
I mean, otherwise, they go ahead. What happened?
Yeah.
Stay consistent, right, Brent? You agree?
Consistent's good.
Yeah.
It's a military.
Yeah.
Another, this is picky uni, but on your second sentence,
Mhm.
Rick, this ordinance is intended to preserve the open views of the shoreline, which I agree. Would it be worth it, or is this redundant, to say this ordinance is intended to preserve the open views of the shoreline in between the buildings?
I mean, I guess I thought about that, but this is just an intent. It's just a mission statement. And basically, I don't know if I can put it in there, but I didn't want to get into, I didn't want this section, I guess with the exception of new construction, but I didn't want this to become the body of the ordinance, where it would possibly conflict with anything that we do afterwards. We definitely don't want it to.
Right.
To provide law. I don't think it should just be a mission statement.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. I would agree with that. We can get design details on the design.
Yeah.
Any other comments on that for Rick? Okay. Then, Rick, you willing to take
Yeah.
another shot at it for the next meeting? Okay.
I think, just so that we're clear,
Yeah.
what we're, the main thing here is adding maybe another sentence to address the whole idea of a vacant lot.
Right, either, right, restricting it to lots with the building or calling out vacant lots, which I guess is essentially what the restriction is trying to do.
And what is our view at the moment? I prefer the original one that just says flatly, no more structures.
Okay.
And if someone with a vacant lot, I mean, they haven't been able to build on it since 1998, so I would hate to start now encouraging people to start building on these vacant lots. So I would take it out generally, I think unless specifically noted, but just speaking.
Yeah, and what we can do with that, unless specifically no, let's see if we end up with something that we want to specifically refer to.
Yeah, I think we'll have to circle back to that once it's all done,
Yeah.
to make sure it aligns.
Yeah.
Because again, if I could see an argument, new construction, the intent of new construction is to be new construction of new structures. But a person could argue that if someone's adding a dormer, that's new construction. New construction in the village is subject to the code. So that's where anyone that has a non-conforming structure or whatever is, yes, that's there, what you have, you can maintain, it's grandfathered, all those things. Any new construction is subject to the code as written today.
I just,
So,
how is it we just, construction of any structure on vacant, on lots that were vacant as of the date are prohibited. Something like that, just something very simple and stated very clearly. Just say no construction on vacant lots.
What if we went back to that, the original goal?
Yeah.
No additional structures.
All right.
And then we don't even get into construction. It's okay, we got a snapshot of what's there. And there'll be no additional structures beyond those existing 198 use.
Okay.
I think that's pretty strong language.
Okay.
Any other comments for Rick?
Well, personally, I would leave it the way Rick Kraft, instead of saying use of the shoreline between buildings. I think that would be what we've done.
Okay, I agree. We'll get into that a little more, I think, when we get into the design criteria. The next thing, BD and I took a crack at the definition of a 1.5 story house. And if anybody else Googled it, you know, when you get a lot of plans and pictures. But the definition is a little elusive. I think what we tried to say here are things like in the first thing, a 1.5 story house is a full first floor, full height interior walls, and an upper level. Try not to start to talk about the second level, which is called an upper level. Because it's not really meant to be a full level of living quarters. And that third dash it just kind of reiterates the first two. These features reduce the floor area. Maybe that goes unsaid. And then the limiting, and again, going back to Andy's nephew, and I don't mean to present him as the expert architect, but he thought rather than putting on an arbitrary number, which he thought was fine if you want to do that, if you start to deal with roof lines, they're going to dictate that the second floor has to be smaller than the first floor. I went up and I have a second floor over my garage. That's, I would call it 1.5 story house. And I measured the knee wall. Does everybody know what a knee wall is? Yeah. And it was close, about 6.5 feet. Now they can be a lot lower, you know, then you get a little more space for storage and stuff. Some people, you know, go all the way to the bottom. And I don't know, maybe knee walls aren't even important to define. If somebody would want to floor that whole area and they'd have all those square feet, well, they certainly wouldn't be living square feet because you can't get in there once the ceiling gets much less than 5 feet.
What's your peak at? Are you up at 28 or 30 feet?
No, I'm shorter. I don't know what my peak is. I'd have to look.
But that would affect it too. wouldn't
It would.
it? If you went to 30 feet.
Right,
you'd have a lot
right.
more to work.
You're right. Yeah, with the shorter that we're talking about, that's going to be restricted. Now, if you have steep roofs, you get more area on the second floor, but you can only go up to 23 feet right now, so that restricts it.
But I mean, you surprised me when you said, well, you have 6 or 7 feet. I
Yeah.
You're kind of talking at this says 5 to 7.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, when I talked to, Vince, he threw out the number 4, you know, like 4 to 6.
4 to
On the knee wall?
Yeah.
So,
Let's take a bed in there, you know.
Yeah, or bookcase.
For
I
it,
mean, I have a knee wall stairs, yeah, that we have bookcases like, they fit in there,
Mhm.
where there's a window.
so, but if we do it this way, we mentioned knee walls, if we talk about upper level has steeply pitched roof gables and dormers, aren't we getting into then a situation that you're trying to avoid, Ken, of having all the homes look the same?
Possibly.
I mean, or do we want to, I mean, if we kept it simple, just a 1.5 story house, a first floor, full first floor, an upper level that has 50% less floor area than the first floor, and let the architects figure it out.
We can do that too.
And then,
Because we'll still define elsewhere the steepness of the roof.
Right.
And not even bother to tell them, I mean, they're gonna figure out what a 1.5 story is relative to the dormer. That kind of bit us last time we did this, so, because we tried to describe with dimensions a 1.5 story house without ever saying, this is a 1.5 story house. And I think that's, if we would have said this, maybe people would have come in with a 2-story house. Now, maybe what we're doing with roof lines, that by itself could probably solve a lot of our problems.
I mean, I saw one definition, it's not in here really, and I don't know if I could recreate it or say it right, but it was something to the, it said that the entire living area is contained within the roof lines. I don't, you know, I mean, I know what they're getting at there, like there's no wall, knee wall or any wall.
Right, right.
It's just a roof line to the bottom floor and everything is contained within it.
Mhm.
That was one difference, but I don't know if that's.
I saw that definition.
Yeah.
What I like about that is, now I'm thinking about knee walls, what do we care if they put in a knee wall? Or if the kids want to sleep on an air mattress all the way up to the corner? What do we really care? And they have their plan comes in with the same number of square feet as the first floor when they measure to the very edge.
Yeah,
Where
What
it
do we
could,
care?
where it could come into play is what you end up doing, if you do anything with square footage on the second.
if we limit square
Because
footage.
that's where it would be nice to align with, you know, like state building code relative to what they consider habitable rooms.
Oh, okay, good point.
Because I'm thinking of like the little tiny houses that are toward the south. And if somebody wanted to tear them down and build up, like, there's sort of those, they're more modern, but they could actually fit into some of our design criteria. If it's like a Swedish barn looking house, you know, that's very simple, but it has a high pitched roof, but they're able to get a second story. Maybe it's, I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with that as long as it kind of fit and it would look different than the more suburban things. And then it could be something that the people that have, you know, what, 240 or 576 square feet on the
Yeah.
bottom, then that gives them an option for an upper story that's the same.
Say in their case, with a very small, very short building, you could use a very steep roof line.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah. I mean, I don't know if it would meet all of our design criteria, or when they came in, if we would think it looked too modern, but I don't know. It's something I would consider.
Well, I guess we should go to state building code as far as what they consider habitable. If our intention is to have a maximum square footage.
It kind of, yeah, I think outlining what the goals are, what the problems are within each one of these sections to help formulate where we want to go. Because all this knee wall stuff might go away from a concern standpoint if we were to say limit second story to half the square footage you have on the main floor. They're not trying to maximize at that point.
Right. Then they'll probably automatically show us knee walls to show us that they're restricting the square footage to livable area.
And there too. It might not be to our advantage to work with state building code, because again, they work with, I think it's the room height test, a certain percentage over 7 feet, something, I think that's their magic number. But again, then for a sleeping loft, a nook, whatever. I mean, say, I've got 4-foot knee walls upstairs in my house, and kids' beds are right underneath there. So there's room to sit up in bed, and there's plenty of room. But again, if we're hypothetically gonna limit second floor square footage to half, but we're only counting that half as the area that has 7 feet of wall height, there's potentially still a whole lot of additional floor that doesn't count as living space or habitable floor area. It's all gonna start dovetailing together, all of these things.
Well, if we start restricting whatever the number's gonna be, 40, 50, 60%, you're automatically going to drive the person, the architect, to show knee walls. Because now if he only gets, first floor is 1,200, he only gets 600, he's gonna show the best 600 feet, right? Does that do us any good? Do we really care? Because we're not interested in interior design, right? We're just interested in exterior design. So if somebody wants to have some loft areas that, but as long as they meet the building code, whatever that might be, nice. Assume that we check that as part of the whole inspection process.
And that's potentially a place where roof height and pitch is gonna be more important than second floor square footage.
Yep, I think so.
It would be that way.
Well, and I know why we did it, but when you think about it, to get the EFM look, we've had that 6 to 12, to 12 to 12 on the books, as long as there's been a historic district ordinance, and we decide to loosen up there to give them more latitude, but I would suggest that's something that we need to go back to. A minimum of 6 and a maximum of 12.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to.
I think that got us in trouble, and just not allow, let them come to us with ideas, so that they'll be all gables then.
This is one really not for now, just to not lose sight of,
Mhm.
but people that have porches, typically a porch doesn't have a 612 roof on a porch. So I don't know if that wants to be a carve out at some point, but
It's usually a shed roof, right?
usually a shed roof and typically a lot less than 612 pitch.
I had an idea, since you're jumping this, of defining what I was calling house attachments. And the attachments that I see are some people have decks at floor level. Some people have porches, and I define a porch as a deck with a roof. Some people have screen-in porches. Some people have window porches that aren't necessarily conditioned living area. And my idea was to define those attachments and say you can replace like with like, including with pitch. And that would allow them. But then we avoid this saying that Culture did get away with is they put on much bigger window porch than was originally there in the final plans. As an unconditioned space, so it got out of the formula. And I would suggest it's another way to control the bulk on these things. And you can go through all the pictures you can see, and we have all those examples in the protected waterfront. Just simply a walk-up deck, a covered deck, screened, and a window. And it just a thought of, if we want to try to control bulk, with whatever you got, you can replace it. Not necessarily bigger, not swap it for another thing. Because you made the point, I think it was you, BD, that in cultures, they already got windows. That's gonna become a living area. It's already windowed in. So it's, in a way, because, and I forgot, they had a windowed in porch already, it just wasn't as big. So when we get down to this whole discussion of what is the original footprint and conditioned area, then I think these other things come into play so that we avoid that whole argument about, wait a minute, you can't push all these together into one footprint. They are different structures. And I think that'll also keep a more interesting look out there. Allowing people to reproduce what they have in new construction. And then the roof line, you're right. Then it would just apply to your main house, let's say.
as opposed to attachments to the house.
What do we think about, going back to the 1.5 story? Should we avoid in this place things like 50%, but just have a definition and then under design criteria, if we want to go? One of the design criteria is the upper level can be, have no more than 50% of the living space or square footage as the first level.
We're doing that because of some of the houses that are really big, right, on the first floor? Or do we not care? I mean, or is there a difference? I mean, that's my only question, because you're gonna, I don't know, I'm just throwing it out.
The 50% for the second, for the small houses makes it almost impossible.
Yeah,
We were trying to give them something, a lot or something up, and then you go 50% of 600 square feet, there's not much left.
Do we even want to call this a 1.5 story house? I mean, should we even do that? And just define what the upper floor is going to be, and someone can call it whatever they want, they can call it.
But then what, yeah, I think if we define the roof lines of 612 to 1212, I don't think, and maybe we should ask Andy's nephew, since he's an objective observer, could you design a 2-story house in 23 foot tall, those type of roof lines, and see what he comes back with?
I think it's all gonna depend on, especially if you're gonna limit the existing footprint, you know, it's gonna depend on that.
Yeah.
Because if the main structure of the house is 20 feet wide versus 45 feet wide. Even that, you know, I think the 9923, I think it's McNeil across from Shoreville Village, a big house.
Yeah.
Again, that might be more than 23 feet now, which is where the, you know, grandfather, the existing, you can reproduce that,
Right.
might be valuable. But with that footprint, it'd probably be really hard for them to even get a decent 1.5 stories out of that with that width.
Right.
The minimum of 612 is the low, because they're gonna get really tall really fast.
Right, exactly. The bigger the house, the more restricted. Let's just picture this widening out.
if the roof pitch is 612,
Yeah.
okay.
What I think would be easier, and whether we get there or not, is if we could achieve the same thing, just working with roof pitches and a height
Mhm.
as opposed to the 1.5 stories.
Okay.
Because again, to me, the 1.5 stories is only easy to evaluate if it's just a single gable roof with no dormers. Once you start adding dormers, now that's full height. That's the purpose of the dormer, is to give you a full height section.
Right.
So then you're gonna have to define what's floor area, what's habitable floor area, an average of 7 feet, you know. I think that's gonna be challenging. If we could achieve our goal
Mhm.
by just dealing with it with roof pitch and maybe a maximum height. I know we toyed with maybe we don't need the maximum height. I think that would be easier in the long run if we could achieve it doing those two things.
Since you touch on something else I think is a big issue here, let's just assume the McNeil house, and that's, folks, I think that's listed as Ephraim Shores LLC. No?
Yeah.
What number is it? What address? I mean,
9923 Shorewood.
Yep, it just recently had a name change and ownership.
oh, I'm sorry, there it is, yeah.
Yeah, their roof pitches are all like, what, 312 or?
Hard to say. It's hard to say from a picture, but they have apparently 2,573 square foot on the first floor. It's a big house. Are we willing to say, or are we, yeah, for people that are over 23 feet right now, if that's our number, whatever the number becomes, the only way that you can maintain your existing house, if you want to rip it down, is to reproduce. Otherwise, you'd have to come down 23 feet. And that would, I think, these taller structures, it's going to keep them, because people are going to work. And then we have to define, reproduction gets a little tricky, because one of these days we have to figure out what do we exactly have out there? And I thought about that in the event of a fire, that we wake up one morning and all we see left is a foundation. How do we know what was out there? Another more detailed issue, but is that what we're saying, that if McNeil's would come in and they knock it down, that you'd have to live with this ordinance? 23 feet? They got their footprint, which is huge, but what could they do in 23 feet?
Yeah, that might be a way of doing it.
And there, we say to them, but we would allow you to reproduce.
Mhm.
And that allows them, it doesn't take anything away from them.
I think they should be grandfathered with the height they have.
Right.
Um,
But not necessarily new construction, I'm saying.
No.
Yeah, or new footprint.
Yeah, if you make the choice that you want to tear down your house and rebuild, then you have to deal with the new height restrictions, the new height. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a different situation because they can build back to what they have.
But even if they use the same exact footprint,
To use the exact same.
so they're doing it voluntarily.
Mhm.
They want to maintain their height, and they say, look, we're going to reproduce the house. So comes the question of what does reproduce mean?
Mhm.
But if we say reproduce means you use the exact same footprint, the same dimensions,
The same style,
same style,
I would think.
yeah, and then your grandfather.
You basically rebuild the exact same
Right.
house in the picture,
Right.
is what we're
Right.
saying.
I mean, if that's a shot.
Yeah.
You
But
know,
if you don't, then the 23 feet.
Right,
now
right.
You're subjecting yourself.
Use the new ordinance.
Yeah.
You're subject to.
And I
the
think
ordinance.
that's gonna encourage people, especially at least the bigger ones, and I found 6 of them that are all north of 1,500 square feet on the first floor. It's gonna encourage them to keep what they have,
Mhm.
updated. And I think we could define reproduce pretty clearly, that we were talking about the same style, dimensions, volume. Okay.
So what if Golterman was just a 6-inch lap cedar sided house, not the dovetail log? You know, at the end of the day, if someone's adding a second story on something, they're probably gonna reside the whole house. So if that's just lap sided, what's,
Well, you
what-
can
what's
get
it, you know?
log and lap side. I mean, you can, or dovetail, look like the dovetail. There's some over in Norwegian woods. So they're kind of from a distance, and even up close, they look a lot like golden.
What's your point on Golden? What we would allow them to do under the?
Yeah, it all comes down to how it's written and what's reproduction.
You're saying if we say the style, if we say reproduction, it includes style and reproduction.
How restrictive we're gonna be with that, because again, it's especially, again, we're creating a carve out for people to do something with non-conforming homes, which isn't always the case.
Right.
Typically, if they are, you can maintain what you have. But, here and in a lot of places, you can essentially end up with a brand new structure, just, doing repair and replacement work, doing it a board at a time.
Yeah.
But at no point the house goes away and it's replaced with a new house. You're replacing a log, then you replace the next log, then you replace the
But
next.
that's reproduction though, isn't it?
Yep.
In a way. Think about Golderman with what we just said in that particular house. We're talking about, you can't make it any wider. It's a long, thin house, north and south, I guess. So he would then say, yeah, I want to rip it down. And we'd say, okay, here's our ordinance. 6 to 12 to 12 to 12 roof line, 23 feet max. And that 2-story house that Vans came in originally with them, that would not fit the 6 to 12. Given how narrow that house is, it would not have been that tall. So I think the dimensions would have taken care of him. I really liked what he did.
What would it answer your question, Brent? If we said, instead of saying exact same style in the definition of reproduction, if we said, it has to be, it has to be, it's gonna be, subject to design review, and it has to be consistent with the provisions of 17.26, the historic district. So, I mean, if it's one shade of gray versus another one, I mean, if it fits within our, our design review, just leave it up to them.
Yeah,
Just leave it kind of
I'm
open-ended.
honestly kind of just spinning wheels a little bit,
Yeah.
like all over the place, but would that carve out just be for those that exceed the height? Or would anyone have the opportunity to reproduce something?
I think anybody should.
Anybody could reproduce.
Okay.
But that would be an identical reproduction, strictly speaking of reproduce.
Okay.
And make that maybe a permitted use.
Yeah, with design review, but with design review, if they actually reproduce, we'd be hard pressed to say, I'd like you to move this window there and this window there, because when I think of a reproduction, is you take a picture of that house right now, and that's what the plans look like. That would be a reproduction, so they could have a new modern home, but it's gonna look the same way, the windows, the doors.
Well, that was kind of for 20 years, that's what PW was. Is you could do nothing. You could maintain what you had. Then it was by conditional use, you could reproduce. Consideration given to reproduction projects. Reproduction with some modification. So we had one or two, I think, it was a Match Melts did that. Built a very similar building. They did tweak footprint or, modify footprint a little, and they added a dormer.
Right.
Or at one point there was a carve out for if there were structural reasons or code reasons, something like that.
Right.
Yeah, then reconsideration. Yeah, I mean, reproduction can work.
And then you're not taking anything away from a McNeil or the people that have a larger house right now. I'm not saying that everything's gonna be equal to people. People that have a large house right now, that paid for a large house right now, should be allowed to maintain that large house. But so it doesn't look like, because that McNeil house could be a big house. 2,000 feet on the first floor. Now, those roof lines are probably precluded from even being stored there. Given the width and the depth of that house. They just wouldn't get that high up. They'd have to do something kind of interesting with maybe multiple roofs. Should we, what I was thinking about doing is going back to our walkthrough of the original ordinance with some of the conversations that we just had. And so let's go back there for a second.
So if we start using the word reproduction, we'll need the definition.
We will need a definition. So for now, we're kind of not sure what we want to do with the 1.5 story definition, or if we want to use it. So we'll set that aside for now. And Rick's good enough to take another swing at the intent. So let's go back into the original ordinance, or the one that Kim sent out, where she drove in some of the changes we made last meeting. If you all have a copy of that one, there it is. There it is. Now, I don't think we had any issues with permitted use or the conditional uses, except if we go down to B, on parcels where there is a residence conditional use, additions, modifications to a replacement of keeping residences subject to 1720.5, okay? Why did we cross out the next line? I wasn't sure why we crossed out.
It's because we
Would make that a permitted use.
Let me see.
It's in red.
Thank you. Okay. So, okay, that's good. Do we, okay, that's the one, reproduce, we do need a good definition of reproduce then. So we get that one right, okay. Then we have the special exception review. I don't think we had any modifications for that. And then we go into 5, where the meat is. General requirements. Number 1, I don't think we had any issue with that, additions, modification, or replacements.
Again, it's gonna depend what we end up inserting. At some point, if we would put a stipulation in there about like no wider than existing or something, that's gotta fit somewhere. So
Okay.
whether that would fit here, talking about grandfathering setbacks, whether that fits somewhere else, I don't know where that would.
Okay. I think that might live in 2. Because when I first did in this, and I think we were very much undecided about this, but footprints in the protected waterfront district cannot be modified. And increases to the total footprint of individual structures within the district are prohibited. But Rick was arguing that that's too restrictive, that you got your footprint and that's it. So then as an alternative, we could say something about the footprints of the existing structures could be no wider as measured parallel to the center line of 42, because it depends where the house is, but can be no wider. And that would be our intent. And then also in there, we might want to put in something that combining accessory structure buildings into the house, I'll call it, primary structure maybe, with no increase of width. And then something to the effect of no upper level would be allowed on this additional square footage. So if you have a shed that's 40 square foot, we'll allow you to bring it in, house no wider, but you can't build a second floor. Somehow you have to incorporate that.
So if somebody had a detached garage and they wanted to use that, oh wait, or is it, if it's a garage, are we considering it accessory structure?
I think so.
Okay, so then they would say, okay, I'm gonna bring in this square footage for my garage, I'm adding it to the first floor. You cannot, they can't add another floor to that.
Right, but there are no detached garages.
Okay,
left
good.
in the protected waterfront. Now, check me out, I found several attached, which Kim noted, and I think I found one more. But I didn't find, because garages are a little different. I was just thinking these small accessory buildings, sheds and so forth. It'd be nice to get them out as blockages and then give the people those additional square footage. I don't think there's any more detached garages.
Right.
There's not many garages.
No, there aren't many garages.
Yeah, up on the north end, you have 2 up by Anderson Dock. Those 2 homes are so landlocked and so non-conforming. I can't imagine you could do anything but reproducing, and they're also very large. The lots, I mean, that's the one where the garage is actually in the state right away. So there's no place to go with that one. So I kind of ignored those 2, because one of them has a large,
Yeah.
well, not large, 2-car detached garage
Mhm.
and a boathouse. So there's a couple, but
Okay, so it's a good point.
I think so. I think the garage would be a good point.
Rick, what does Krebs have, that second building, is that a bunkhouse?
Yes, no
No water?
No water. No water. Hey, Krebs is a good example. He did a nice job.
Yeah, I
That
think
board,
there's water.
It is?
there's no bathroom. Because we didn't, otherwise it'd be a second structure.
Yeah, because they had 3 and went to 2.
I thought it was supposed to be a bunkhouse. Well, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is, we approved at the time. But that's a good example of something that blocks possibly more protected, more view than originally, because we end up with a very wide house. And second.
But if you decide to go up high, Could you do it on both structures or just the main structure?
I don't know.
Because I wonder what that thing is classified.
Do you think it's too, if that had water and sewer, that would be a separate house? You think there's water and sewer in that bunkhouse?
Pretty sure.
Wow. I don't know why I recall that we wouldn't allow them to put a bathroom in there, just put 2 bedrooms in. Yeah, I keep calling it. Well, that might be something that we have to carve out, because he could come back to us and say, no, I want to do a second floor.
Well, that's, yeah, when I was walking down there, okay, I'd hate to see every one of these go up 23 feet.
Right.
You know, the log house next to Golden.
Yep.
Yeah, their name. And you got the 2 Shoma homes.
Which are big homes, or one of them's big home.
Stu's maybe considered 1.5 now.
Yeah. Okay, so, going back to 5A2. Are we all in agreement that we do not want to restrict to the original footprint, but instead want to restrict that the house can become no wider? Because this would be a place to put it, I think.
Personally, I like the notion of just saying it can't be modified. My impression as a newcomer is that that was changed because of the harsh situation, where it was a great solution, and now that that's been taken care of, I would really want to modify the footprint. That does solve a lot of the problems we're talking about.
I don't think that was my recollection. We didn't change it. It was a harsh. We changed, I'm not quite sure why we changed it. When I was trying to look back at in my notes. We wanted to give people more latitude, but I'm not quite sure why we allowed modifications to the footprint.
I think, was it because of the Price House and because they were gonna decrease their overall footprint somewhat, but reconfigure? So we found that to
It could have
be-
been, because we worked on this while we reviewed the Price House. So we were kind of, that was our example.
So we want to go cannot modify.
What's the consensus?
I like that.
I'm okay with modifying the footprint. If it decreases the width and they can make it work with the setbacks, I'm okay.
If it decreases or just doesn't widen?
Doesn't widen,
Of course, if you did widen, then what could you do?
well, you could
You can go
Take-
deeper.
go deeper.
But then you have to go narrow.
Yeah.
Which is what we want, to keep the same square footage, right?
It's gonna be a case by case. You know, it really is only gonna work for people that have a decent sized lot with some room to play with or a irregular shaped building.
Which,
Again, assuming those existing setbacks are grandfathered, unless you've got a attached garage or whatever it is, that's, like Price or Cultural, where there's, something hanging out towards the road. 2 people, unless you've got an alcove existing in an L-shaped building, something irregular in which you can set that, it's not gonna be a candidate for everybody.
because of all of those restrictions anyway, because of the
Because of either
setbacks. there.
setback or if we do the lot width. That's gonna be through the building depth. That's gonna be very restricted.
Yeah, we do the building with, I'm still kind of on the side of, you got what you got. That's what you bought, that's what you own, that's what you got. But I think if you do the building width, the only way to go then is a more narrow building and a deeper building, which people aren't gonna want because they're gonna want their views of the lake.
And they,
So they're gonna end up with about what they have now.
yeah,
It might be the trick.
Yeah, and that's, let the architect and the owner figure that out. It gives people an option. I just prefer it rather than just saying, no, you got what you got. I hate to tell you, when we could actually get something that people might like more with a deeper house. Because then you're not getting the more open views, just by definition.
Well, for like the McNeils, let's just say they wanted to do it. Let's say they wanted to take off this side building.
Right.
They're the ones who have a big enough lot.
Right.
Potentially, that they could add something in there.
Mhm.
And it would decrease the side view. Or
Yeah.
the width.
But then that would assume that side building is no more than 23 feet.
I know.
If they sliced it off,
And their roof pitch would have to change and all sorts of things. Yeah, it's not gonna be easy to do it.
Which gets back to Ken's original point of encouraging people to stick with their existing structure.
without absolutely restricting it.
Yeah.
So, I should just shut up.
No, you're the building and guy with the experience.
So, again, we're encouraging people to work with what they have, but, you know, so if you're reproducing, you know, we'll keep picking on McNeil, because they probably have the biggest building on the biggest lot.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Like 4 or 5 acres.
there's
Yeah,
that,
big,
call it a bump out on the south side, and it's not as tall. So if we grandfather setbacks, say no more, no wider, would we allow them through modification to move that 20 feet closer to the water? In a modification?
So,
Because that's got me thinking too, again, throwing all kinds of wrinkles in there. Depending on what we do from a modification standpoint and with the roof pitches. I understand if you're starting with a clean slate, 612, 1212, whether we do dormers or not. But in a world where we're allowing modifications to a footprint, are we gonna hold that modification, you know, one, to those grandfathered setbacks closer with whatever that looks at, but also roof pitch? You know, what if the McNeil house, the whole thing is 512? Is that modification, or they grandfathered to the existing 512 the house? Or would we make an addition through modification, comply with the 612, and now it matches nothing else on the existing house?
You brought up a problem. They could slice it off, and with a connection with the breezeway, a wall-designed breezeway that looks like conditioned space, put that on the back of the lawn. Say, well, you know, this is just what I had before. I'll do the same roof pitch and everything else. I'm just moving it. I'm gonna be no wider. In fact, that might be narrower.
But if that house, say is shaped like that,
Huh?
but setbacks are no issue. What if they wanted to take this box, move it to here?
Yeah.
Shift it there. It's no wider, it's no closer, it's no more non-compliant.
Well, that we wouldn't see anything from the street. We would see just, there'd be no more bulk.
But again, it's just those unique ones that have that opportunity.
Right.
But it might just be,
I would have no problem with that.
yeah, I don't know if it would be a problem or not.
Do we need to say in here that an existing structure, maybe we're already saying cannot be divided into two, and McNeil say, you know what, I'm gonna put a separate structure without plumbing, whatever you wanna call it, like,
That we're good, because you can only have one residence per legal lot of record. There's just one lot there, so they couldn't make two.
and get back to Krebs.
Because they had three.
How did Krebs do it?
Because they had three, so they were making it more conforming.
Oh, they had 3 lots, they had 3 built.
Three buildings. They had three, a main house and 2 cottages. They pivoted to one main house and 1 cottage.
You're right, so they had plumbing in those cottages already, okay. I'd be willing to take a stab at that A2 and work on some wording that, at least for now, says that the footprint could be no wider. And let's see, talk that through as opposed to freezing it.
Can be modified, but increases to total footprint of individual structures within the district are prohibited, then you'd add something,
I think those are 2 different thoughts. I want to deal with the footprint first,
okay?
that it could be no wider. And then the second thing is increases,
Are prohibited.
I want to say increases to the footprint of individual structures are prohibited. I think that's where we got confused with our builders of the way that sentence reads. Okay, number 3, Brett brought up the standards for protected waterfront that we referenced there. Were we suggesting that we want to do anything with those, although those help the developer, the builder, the resident to lay out all their setbacks? So now they're right in there.
I mean, I think one kind of is a carve out of this, so I don't know if one should actually end up being a 3 sub A or something like that. When we talk about grandfathering setbacks here, then we miss the table of the standards for setbacks. I don't know, it just, we kind of jump from setbacks to footprints back to setbacks.
Oh, okay, so you want to change 2 and 3?
Maybe that.
Maybe they read better like that?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Or at least tie them together somehow.
Okay. And then number 4, I think is, obviously still applies here. Let's spend a few minutes on design criteria. Number 1, all projects shall incorporate a design that is in keeping with the character of the historic district and the language of 1726. Okay, good. And number 2, visual impact from the streets is to be minimized, excuse me, on all projects occurring. And what would be the language that we refer to the fact that no project is allowed with a wider footprint than currently exists?
Then you talk about putting that up here in 2 though,
Yeah,
footprint. We don't-
and then maybe
Where
2
the best
is,
place for it is, but it doesn't have to exist twice.
no,
Yeah.
maybe if 2A is general requirements, maybe what we have now is 2A should come down to design criteria.
I think better in general.
I think design criteria is looser.
It's
I mean,
kind of-
even honestly, the 23 feet, to me, design criteria is more like a design review process. These are the guidelines from which we will review something. To me, hard and fast things should be higher up, should be under general.
And maybe the height requirement of 23 and roof pitches all should be under 5A.
Yeah.
Wait, I have completely the opposite review. When I see general requirements, that's kind of setting up the general, and then design criteria, at least as an engineer, that's your very specific. But those are the numbers of no taller, no wider. But whatever we do, we should get them lumped together.
It should be consistent,
Yeah.
structure wise anyway.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Is there a place where we would talk about, and again, this all comes down to if we do something with the second floor square footage, with the height, the busyness of roof lines, bulk, is there anything we want to add there relative to that? I know we have language within the historic district ordinance about compatible infill and bulk and all that, but that certainly came into play. The busyness of the roof lines should get too massive, too many dormers, too busy. Yeah, we don't need to be redundant.
Right.
But
I would, under that visual impact from the street is to be minimized. I think that would be a good place to point out that if the landscaping is going to be replaced, the landscaping plan is required so that we kind of alert people that if you're gonna re-landscape, we're gonna be looking at the view to the water. So I guess we did decide, and it's already crossed out. No, we didn't yet. Then we have primary roof lines less than 612 and more than 1212 are prohibited. We crossed that out. And, we moved it to number 5. Aren't we gonna cross out the number 6?
No, and then moved up into the requirements.
Right. And I was just gonna say, I think we should eliminate it altogether. That's the thing that we changed with the last change that I think got us in the most trouble. and allow a two-story house.
So 612 will be the minimum.
612 would be the minimum.
So there goes sheds and shed roofs, yeah.
And we can get into more discussion about a shed, because a shed, 612 isn't gonna be much of a shed, especially with 23-foot maximum, they're real tall. And maybe that's fine. I mean, again, going back to the architect's comments, he said you could, if you want sheds or allow sheds, you could carve out 20 linear feet of shed dormers are allowed at no flatter than 312. We could do that if you wanted to allow for some sheds.
Yeah.
But I think, my opinion, we need to keep it consistent with the historic district. And then if we want to have a little carve out for sheds to allow a little more interesting of a design, we could do it.
I know this comes up all the time. Ephraim, the history of Ephraim is whenever you came to Ephraim, that's when you locked it in your mind. But will this be a place to talk to Cody about which one is more historically authentic or goes back farther, a gable dormer or a shed dormer, and which one is more? I mean, again, this is just an overlay within our historic district, as part of the historic district, so I don't know that we certainly could be more restricted. We are more restricted than the historic district, but are we talking about it from a design standpoint or protected waterfront standpoint from that height?
Well, it's,
Why are we looking, is it just in relation to second floor square footage that we have the concern over roof pitch and PW as opposed to roof pitch in historic district?
in PW, it's to limit the second floor. We don't mind in the historic district, have two-story houses if they can meet the 28 feet. We have some. Your in-laws house was certainly historic, and it's a full two-story house. But I think what we're saying is protected waterfront. That's where we were trying to limit it to a story and a half or whatever dimensions we want. And I wouldn't mind making allowance for sheds, but a certain amount of them, so you don't end up with what I think if they call it an English tutor, but basically it looks like a 1.5 story house, but it's a full 2-story because the second roof goes all the way down, but there's a shed dormer across everything but the outside 3 feet. That to me is a 2-story house that they made to look like a 1-story house. So if we could limit the shed dormers, so rather than doing 2 gables, they could do a couple shed dormers just to mix things up a little bit. And it probably gives them more room inside. It would give the shed. I'd be willing to take a crack at that shed. Trying to put something down. In fact, that may be, tell Andy what we're doing. We can pump set off his.
Sure.
Nephew and see what he thinks. He did say that if we made allowance for a shed, he suggested that we limit the amount of it.
Yeah.
And now we kind of got to play architect, because I could let it, ask him, given our size of houses, how limiting should we be? 10 feet of shed or?
Yeah, or a percentage of, and again, it all depends how complicated the roof system is. If it's a single gable roof, then, the peak is 40 feet long, and you got 10 feet of shed, that's easy to calculate, but if there's 4 or 5 roof lines that come in, I think maybe that's, if it's not easy calculable, the roof system's too busy.
And that brings me back to something else. On the Coulter house, I know I should say this, but I believe Grace voted against it. And Larry, I'm not sure if you did or not, but I missed your last comment I know that you wanted to make about the complexity of the roof lines.
I think that's right. I did think I voted against it and then Grace voted for it.
Oh, okay. But there was still, and I think that I at least felt the same way when I looked at that house. It was so complicated. Is there some verbiage we could put into here to minimize the number of different roof lines? I'm not quite, getting back to simplicity of design.
Isn't that contained in the historic district ordinance?
I'm gonna have to look at it.
And again, it's a small sample size, as you could look at the 29 homes or whatever, but being a lot of the old stock is addition on top of addition, you might be inviting some complicated roof lines and multiple roof lines doing so. Now, again, cultural is new construction, so they could have made that easier.
Right.
Would have been easier to make it easier or simpler.
Mhm.
But again, like with Golterman, there's a lot going on there, these little boxes and how you tie that in.
Yeah.
You're not gonna do that with 2 roof lines.
That's true. I think what made cultures is, was it mainly from the south view? It wasn't the water or the road, but there was a lot going on. Of course, we were also fighting with that 312. If you go from 612 to 1212, I don't think you're gonna see like, people use a lot of different 712s, 812s. I could be wrong. It all depends on the width of that structure, what roof line they're gonna go with, and keeping it under 23 feet. Well, I'll look at historic ordinance and see how that addresses the roof line. I know it's a minimum of 612. But let's see if it says anything about the minimum number of roof lines.
I don't think it does, but it does talk about maintaining the overall appearance, bulk, scale, and density of buildings. And that simplicity is the key descriptive word. So, that was going to be my little speech. We hadn't already passed the point of no return.
Yes, simplicity, how do we define simplicity?
Well-
That's what.
But I like at least, one of the things we said we were gonna do is make sure when we're done with this, that it's consistent with historic district. And if we're using the word, the simplicity there, it's certainly, it gives us latitude. We could say it's not very simple.
Actually, as we look further, it does say primary roof pitch shall not be less than 312 nor more than 1212.
In historic district?
Yeah.
Boy, I stand corrected.
Oh.
Yeah,
That's page 79 of the booklet.
But then are we inviting busy roof lines with the 312 in the protected waterfront? Do we need to match it exactly to historic preservation?
well, I think
Historic district?
that allows the second point. As the architect said, anyone can design a 2-story building, full 2 stories with a 312 roof line, 23 feet. So that's why I was thinking, that's what opened everything up. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Did the protected waterfront, wasn't it previously 612?
I thought we added that.
Well, we added,
At some point in time. Obviously, we added it.
the original ordinance, there was no new construction allowed, so. Well, we need to think about that. But I think the roof line is one of the most powerful tools we have here in what that second floor looks like. Okay. Anything else that anyone would like to bring to the table? Rick will make a correct. In intent. And what I did on the first page, at the After you take a crack at some of the things we talked about under general requirements and design criteria. And I would again encourage everybody to go through that book. Yeah.
Very interesting. No, this is the, these, the redid like that, a half story, not too long ago,
Oh, yeah.
you know?
It's off a little bit. Is there the Board of Appeals?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, extra, right. Right.
Ken,
Yes.
extending beyond what you want to go with. 5B2, the visual impact from the street will be minimized along projects occurring in number that will district.
Yeah.
I really thought that was vague, and I had suggested simply saying, oh, no structural changes shall be approved if they reduce views of Eagle Harbor from the street.
No,
So I just throw that out again. It's, you don't have to get into, what is a project occurring, stuff like that.
where's that now? I remember your comment, but where's the ordinance?
It's,
You said-
just looking at design criteria B.
Oh, 5B, okay, I see, 5B2.
Right. That's 5B2.
Yeah, I didn't go back to 6 pages of everybody's comments, but don't forget, helpful also to kind of read through them again to refresh our memories. We will meet again 2 weeks before plan committee.
okay.
And in the meantime, as I said, take a look at the black book and, oh, here. Let me hand these out. Kim, this is an addition to what's in your black book right now.
Okay.
There was one address missing.
Okay.
So that's now on there.
Oh, yeah, I just had a question mark. It's 991.
Correct. Yeah, I'm gonna pass these 2 back to Brent. And for Grayson for Andy. All right. Any other comments?
Ken,
Yes, Kathy?
it's Kathy Pentler, yeah. I have a comment. I don't know if it's ever possible, but I know with like our condo at Ephraim Condos and our condo in Florida, building cannot take place during the season. Specifically, you're thinking the Culture House. Anyone at the public beach is going to listen to construction the whole season. Plus, the roads are going to be compromised slightly. Is there any thought of ever putting something in the code that between Memorial Day and Labor Day, construction in the protected water could not be underway?
We can certainly discuss that. I do know that we require a parking plan for the contractor, so
Yes.
he doesn't fill up the beach.
But it's not, yeah, it's not just the parking, it's the noise, it's the disruption. You know, it's such a short season, and it's not
Yeah.
uncommon with condos. I don't know why the village couldn't do that for the short tourist season.
Let me write a note and we can certainly consider that.
Kathy, SBD, I think, the Lear said they wouldn't be starting cultures until September.
Which is
Like I
perfect.
asked. Right.
Right. So this, you know, once it's in there, I know at the condo, I don't care what I want to do. There's no way I can do it after Memorial Day. And in Florida, I can't do it, you know, during the winter. So it would just be a non-negotiable for the,
So you-
you know, benefit of the tourists and the residents. You know, how would prices want to sit and listen to that all summer?
requirement, I understand the Ephraim condos, they don't allow, I'm confused, what do they not allow during the season?
You cannot have any projects, any construction during the season. In
At the
Florida,
Ephraim con-
during the winter season, wait, yes. And that's common in seasonal dwellings.
So that would just be interior work though, right?
Well, the condo, yes, because, because it would disrupt our neighbors' quality of, you know, their time there. The association only does emergency work outside during the season. So the intent is to protect the you know, the majority of the people that are there for such a short time.
Right. What was your comment, PD?
No, I mean, you know, it could apply to the whole building. They have like 3 or 4 buildings maybe, we roofed them a year or 2.
Oh,
And they did that in the off season,
Okay.
obviously, early spring,
Yeah.
late spring.
I think that's what we should look at.
I think,
Uh,
doesn't Sister Day have something like that? Kim, do you know that? I thought they had a restriction on what could be done down there.
You know, we certainly restrict our public works types of projects to off-season, like we had a finish on the pedestrian path of June 30, I think.
You know, probably the easier path would be not from a zoning permitting standpoint, but just a general noise ordinance standpoint, because that we have in place now. If you're building roads, if you're general construction type, it's, you know, either starts at 7 or 8 or 9. I think that would be
Yeah.
logical.
Well,
During
this
the
is just
season.
going to get, it's going to get more common and you know, we've been fortunate just to have one under construction at a time. What if you had 2 or 3? It wouldn't be passable. Plus the noise would be just obnoxious.
Well, let's consider that. Well, the several things we're considering right now. Good point, good detail. Any other comments? I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye.